Welcome to an all-new episode of Get Lit with Lianna, the podcast. Join me as I sit down with a new guest author in each episode to discuss their books, careers, and everything in between. Today I'm sitting down with romance author Tia Williams to talk about her new book, A Love Song for Ricki Wilde. This is Tia's second time on the show. I've been such a fan of her books for the longest time, so I was so excited to chat with her about her new release. This book is so different from all of her other books. I was really excited to read it because it didn't totally sound like something I would normally read, and I'm so happy that I did. Not only did we talk about this book, we talked about what she's working on next. For all of you who are fans of her other book, 7 Days in June, you'll be very excited. And we also talked about the movie A Perfect Find on Netflix, which is an adaptation of one of her books. This was such a fun chat. I hope you all enjoy. So without further ado, my conversation with Tia Williams starts right now. Welcome back, Tia, to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today. I've been looking forward to this for so long. So welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. But before we kind of get into your new book, I want to catch up a bit since so much has happened since we last spoke. So in, I guess, a few short words, can you bring me up to speed as to what's been going on with you for the last year and what have you been doing? Because I feel like you've been literally doing the most.
I've been doing too much, way too much.
No, but not too much though, the best amount.
Yeah. So, all right. So what have I been doing? So 7 Days in June came out in 2020. And then I was like, I'm going to take a break. And I did not, in fact, take a break because I got the idea for Ricki Wilde. And so I started writing that. I finished it. And then I just on Monday turned in another manuscript, which is a YA novel featuring Audrey, the daughter from 7 Days in June. Who is now a teenager.
That's incredible. So when did you kind of have that story in your head? Was it when you were doing 7 Days in June and you were like, I'm going to come back to this later? Or was it only after Ricki Wilde, you were like, wait, I kind of want to revisit that? How did that come to be?
It was really the reader reaction to Audrey.
Okay.
She's everyone's favorite.
Yeah.
And, I was like, maybe it would be fun to see where she is at 4 years later, as a teen. She's such a precocious 12-year-old. Who is she as a 16-year-old? So, yeah.
So is this your first YA? I feel like you wrote YA before, no?
I did write YA before. One in 2006, one in 2007. Yeah.
Crazy. So
but I haven't, it's not my, I haven't done it in years, and I had to really reacquaint myself with the genre.
Right. So what's that like, kind of doing these 3 really epic romances, writing these really adult love stories, and now going back to kind of that younger taste?
Yeah. I mean, it's hard because I'm a steamy writer.
Yeah.
But really what I did was wrote the exact same way, but just scaled it back.
Okay. I'm so excited.
Yeah, it's fun.
So you just gave in a first draft kind of vibe, we're still early days on this, or is it do you have any idea how quickly this is? Because I know Ricki Wilde was a really fast process, and obviously we're going to talk about that, but how is this going to be a fast moving train also? Is there any idea of the timing for this, or?
Yeah, this is fast too. It's going to be, I believe, summer of 2025. But what I turned in was extremely a first draft.
Okay.
So, but it should be complete probably by May. Yeah.
And obviously the other major thing that had happened in the last year is that the movie adaptation for The Perfect Find came out, which was so exciting. It was just so fun for me being obsessed with that book to see these characters come to life. What was it like for you to I know you were involved in the project and you were on set a few times, but what was it like to see it as a finished product, and what has the response been?
So yeah, it's crazy because I was actually not at all involved in the process. I was on set a few times. I was an extra in a couple of scenes. But yeah, it was a total hand your baby over to the pros, and so when I saw it, it premiered at Tribeca Film Festival.
Yeah.
And so it was really I was just a member of the audience. I forgot that this was adapted from my book. You know what I mean? Like I would get so lost in it, and then I'd be like, oh, these are my characters.
Right.
Those are my people. Like this is wild. So it was, yeah, unlike anything I've ever experienced.
So insane. And like, what were readers saying? Were people like excited about it? Like, I'm sure you just had an overwhelming amount of like excitement. And also, I'm sure so many people now have found that book from the movie.
Mhm.
Did you notice like a major influx in like sales or reviewers or readers or anything like that?
Yeah, well, even the most dramatic thing was how many international editions The
Mm,
Perfect Fine has now, because you know Netflix touches the world,
yeah.
all over the world. So it has a zillion international editions, which has opened me up to a whole new readership.
Yeah.
Um, the film adaptation went top 10 in 49 countries. So if you think
Dang.
about, the people that watched it are like, oh, it's a book, and oh, I've heard that the book is kind of the same but pretty different. Like I want to see what happens in the book.
Yeah.
So it really, yeah, it really broadened the readership, which was cool.
Insane. And kind of on the same note, I guess, obviously 7 Days in June was optioned to be a TV show. So like, what are your hopes now with having another book? Like, I feel like everything you're creating now is just like getting adapted because it's so good and everyone just wants to see it on the screen. So like, are people still, are you involved in that at all? Are people still like moving the ball along with that? Like, do you have anything to share about that project?
So this one I am involved in. I'm an executive producer, so yeah, it's going to be a completely different experience. We got really held up with the writers' strike and the actors' strike, so we lost a lot of time there. But so I don't have any news on talent attached or anything like
Yeah.
that. But it is coming, so I'll keep you
I,
posted.
I cannot wait to see that story. I mean, as much as I adored The Perfect Find and I like really love it, I literally rewatch the movie like all the time. It's one of my like comfort movies on Netflix. It's one of the watch again ones, you know?
Yes.
I,
Oh, I love that.
like 7 Days in June obviously really struck a chord with me. Like that book did a number on me. Like I love that book. So I'm beyond excited. And especially as much as I love a movie, I love a TV series. Like I love getting to get like real invested in like getting the
Right.
question of the story and like more than just an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes, like
Hmm.
a good 6, 7, 8 hours plus of a story. So like
Yeah.
I know everyone is so excited. But okay, before we go into I guess a love story for Ricki Wilde, which is so exciting. I would love to know about like the writing process behind this because you mentioned it was like so speedy fast. Like tell me a little bit about like how the story came to you and like how you made it happen so quickly. Like how did it just like go from your brain to a page to all of our hands in such a short time?
I don't even know how that happened. It's such a whirlwind. But when it comes to the idea, like the way the idea came to me, it has never happened to me before. It probably never will again. Like I was up in the middle of the night with insomnia, and these like disparate ideas fell into my head. So it was like a haunted piano, a fabulous Harlem brownstone, Harlem Renaissance, a florist, a mysterious musician, and what was the last element? Leap year.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, I have these things, and I have to like, and I'm obsessed with all of them. I love the idea of all of them. Now I have to figure out how to make it all a story. And so yeah, that's what happened. And um I was nervous about pitching it to my editor and agent because I was like, okay, this has just a touch of magical realism. So
For
it's a
sure.
little different than, what I usually write. But they were all in. So yeah.
So crazy. And then like how did the process move so fast? Like from you doing a first draft until now, like how long has this process been? Like how many months are we talking?
I think I started writing in fall. Yes, December, like around Christmas of 2021
See?
to Christmas of 2020 or spring of 2023. So
Crazy.
like about 13, 14 months.
Wild. And were there a lot of revisions or was it kind of one of those experiences where it's like you literally like spat it out on the page and it was good to go? Like, what was the process in writing the story like?
I spat it out on the page with much effort. Like I can't seem to write at home. So once a month I would go somewhere for a week and stay in a hotel alone
Okay.
and bang out a bunch of chapters. And
Wow.
my rule to myself was these don't have to be good. Like you just have to write them because, everyone says the first draft, the quote unquote shitty first draft, it's you telling yourself the story. So you have it. You know what I mean? It's not about the reader. It's not about your editor. It's not about anyone. You're basically telling yourself the story so you have something to fix.
Right.
So yeah, I went to these hotels once a month. So I guess I went like 12 times and made a promise to myself not to try to make it pretty, just write it. And that's how I got it done.
It's insane. And it's, as you said, it's so different from anything else that I've read by you. Like, so, like, it feels like you because of the way it's written. Like, it's so beautifully written. And that's something I always have said about your books. And I said it to you last time we chatted. Like, I'm obsessed with the way you write. So it very much feels like a book that you would write. It feels like you, but it's so different. And so, like, the concept was just, I had my jaw literally on the floor, like, multiple times. I loved how it all, like, connected together and, like, just in like a weird, like unexpected, but kind of like, oh, that makes sense way. Like it just was very
Mhm.
satisfying to read, if that makes sense. But for
Yeah.
those who've not yet read the book, I obviously don't want to spoil, but can you give like a little elevator pitch about what the story is about? I know you just like threw in some elements there when you said that, like the leap year and the piano,
Mhm.
musician, all those things came together. But kind of in a summary, what is this book about?
I know it's so hard to talk about this book without spoiling the big thing.
Yeah.
That's been the challenge in trying to talk about it because it's
Yeah.
like A Love Song for Ricki Wilde is about a free-spirited florist who is from this big, sprawling, very serious aristocratic family. And she wants nothing to do with the family business. And she breaks away from the family to pursue her dream, which her family thinks is ridiculous, and it's opening a flower shop. She moves to Harlem, opens a flower shop in this brownstone, and there she has a chance, quote unquote, meeting with a very mysterious musician. And it turns out that they have a connection that's kind of inexplicable. And they fall madly and passionately in very confusing love. And layered on top of this love story are a lot of different elements: a leap year magic, a voodoo curse, a 96-year-old landlady who knows more than she seems, and a disgraced child star who is Ricky's best friend, who is very nosy and uncovers some of the mystery as well. So, yeah, it is a wild ride.
It's a wild ride. And I have to say, as somebody who like strictly reads romance, like I've tried to branch out into like fantasy and other things.
Mhm.
I just can't do it. I was super worried when I got the pitch for this book. I was like, is this going to be something that I just can't get down with? Like, is this something that is just, I'm not going to be able to like suspend disbelief? I'm not going to be, like I was just worried. But I have to say, there was not one millisecond part of me, like not even the smallest bit, that at one point was like, this ain't for me. Like I bought into it from the beginning. I totally believed in it. It didn't pull me out of the story. It didn't like worry me. It wasn't something that like I was like turned off by at all, which is what I was worried about when hearing that there was like a little bit of like
Mhm.
magical realism in it. Were you worried when you included that maybe it would like be something that wasn't for everyone, or were you kind of just like, this is the way the story has to be told, so I'm gonna try it? Because like I feel like it's so different from everything else you've written.
Well, it's a couple of things. Like, you know, I wasn't worried, and this is why. I am not a fantasy fan. I don't, the only magical realism I've ever really liked is like Water for Chocolate and some of
Okay.
Salman Rushdie's um, books. I don't like having to suspend my disbelief.
Mhm.
This story had to have a touch of magical realism because I love voodoo and magic. Um, so it's just seasoning. It's not the story.
Mhm.
Like I always talk about Game of Thrones, like what an odd show to capture such a broad audience because dragons and shit is very niche,
For sure.
but it wasn't what Game of Thrones was about. like there were dragons flying around in the background,
Yeah.
but that wasn't really what it was about. You know what I mean? And so that's how I think of A Love Song for Ricki Wilde too. And also that it's such a me book. It's so my voice. It's so contemporary. Even the flashback scenes are told in a very contemporary way that happens to be the 1920s.
Yeah.
So like the way I write with the zippy dialogue and the pop culture and stuff is exactly the same, but seen through the lens of the 20s. So they're talking about pop culture 20s things,
Yeah.
and they're kind of talking in jazz age slang, but it's the same voice, it's the same vibe.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so that's a perfect parlay kind of into my next like thought or question about the dual timeline and like having the story set in the 1920s and then also in the current day. Like what kind of research did you have to do to kind of perfect that 20s voice, 20s lens? Like what kind of like I guess research was necessary? And also at the same time, like how did you manage to like make it a love letter to Harlem and the Harlem Renaissance? Like how was that balance of like it has to be factually right and has to make sense and I have to use real things from that time, but also have it be very like contemporary at the same time?
Hmm. Well, first of all, I am a big 20s person. I love everything that was happening in the 20s. I love Hollywood in the 20s, all the silent movies, the silent movie stars, read all the memoirs, read the biographies, Hollywood history. I'm big on it. As you know from The Perfect Find,
Yeah,
probably.
yeah.
I love what was happening in Paris with Fitzgerald and Hemingway and Gertrude Stein and all those people. My favorite is what was happening in New York. And so Harlem Renaissance, that era is something that I've studied for a long time. So I actually didn't have to do that much research. In fact, there are so many elements and people from that time that I wasn't able to get in.
Mhm.
Um, but what I didn't know, which is going to sound weird to anyone who isn't from New York, I didn't know Harlem itself. I'm a Brooklyn girl. And Brooklyn and Harlem are so far away on the train. Like it's just like the landscape is different. The streets are laid out differently. Like it's a totally different vibe. Like Harlemites don't fuck with Brooklyn and Brooklynites don't fuck with Harlem. I
Yeah.
once dated a guy from Harlem and it was a long distance relationship. Okay. So I had to like get on the subway with my little notebook and go to Harlem and walk around like a tourist because I
Right.
just don't know it.
Mhm.
Um, and that was the education that I really had to have. So I'm walking around trying to get the vibe right of the people and the sights and the scenery. And what I noticed was that you could be walking around Harlem on the most random street and
Mhm.
you'll see this plaque that is so small you could easily walk, and never notice it. And it'll say something like, "Oh, by the way, Billie Holiday was discovered here singing at 14 in 1929." It's like, what?
Yeah.
You know, just the idea of it's almost like Pompeii, like a city under a city. Like you're walking around this contemporary neighborhood, but you're also existing with the people and places of the past, and they just pop up on you, like ghosts.
Mhm.
And so that really inspired a lot of the story. I also had this map of 1930s like nightlife.
No way. Wait, how
And
did you have a map of this? Like,
I found it on Google.
oh my God.
I
Okay.
was trying to find the address of a speakeasy from the 20s, and then this map showed up from the 30s. And it shows you where everything is, well, or was. And so I'm like looking for these locations, and it's like, oh my God, this famous nightclub is a Walgreens now. Like it was really cool. So yeah, all of those elements made it into the book.
It's so nuts. It's so fun. And I know obviously like that's a major chunk of the story, but then obviously back to the magical realism, like the voodoo magic, the leap year, like why did you like what about that is so intriguing to you? I know you like talked about elements of like voodoo and other stuff in other books. And I know that's something that's like always been an interest of yours, but how come in this story where you like this is where I'm going to use it and this is how I'm going to use it? Like what was the connection light bulb in your head that you were like, aha, then now's the time I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, I love voodoo and all of that. My mom is Louisiana French Creole. That's very much a part of the heritage. And also during the Great Migration, when Black people were traveling from the South to the North, in pursuit of a, better life. Um, a lot of the sort of cultures and spirituality and mysticism from the South were brought up to the North. And in a lot of like early jazz and blues music, they're talking about voodoo because a lot of people were
Such a
coming up
good
from.
connection. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so it was something that was really present in Harlem Renaissance art and um, music at the time. And it just felt really right that it would be in this story. The leap year stuff I think is really cool because people always say on February 29th, since it only happens every 4 years, it's like when the veil between this world and the other world is very thin. So stuff, seeps through. It felt like a perfect time to tell the story. What's really crazy is that the book is coming out in the leap month where the book takes place.
Perfect. It's perfect.
Which was an accident. It was supposed to come out last summer,
Oh my.
but I couldn't meet my deadline. But it ended up being a very happy accident.
That's serendipitous that it can come out. It's like I also love like reading it with the dates and stuff, how it felt very like in real time because it literally was in real time, which is so I feel like you never really read books where it's like you're reading about the summer that literally you just lived through, right? Like months ago. Obviously this is a love story. Like it wouldn't be a Tia Williams book if it wasn't a love story. And the connection in this team is just off the charts, as everyone was saying before I read the book. All my like friends who have gotten advance copies also, they were like, don't worry, like you're in for what you know you're in for. But what I loved about this book is that it's insta love because it has to be and it makes sense. But that's a trope that often like people are afraid to use or play with. And I feel like in your books, like that's not really something you've ever done before, have like that insta love connection. So tell me about kind of having that be like the romance relationship trajectory. And like, was that hard for you to write, easy for you to write? Because you kind of just like get right into it with them and their love story.
Yeah, it's hard to write. I didn't know that was going to be so hard. It was probably the hardest element. Because my whole thing is I love building a case for the love and like really showing why they like each other and why they have to be together, why there's no other option. And if you're dealing with a story where it's very important to the story that they
instantly,
trying not to spoil this. Yeah, like they instantly
connect.
Yeah. Oh, that's hard to talk about.
I know.
If it's important to the story that they have to instantly connect, then you have to work harder to prove that they're supposed to be together because you could just be lazy and sit on the fact that the reader already knows they're supposed to be together. And that's my least favorite kind of love story where you're just told that they're made for each other instead of being shown that they're made for each other. So I had to work even harder to make sure that the reader was understanding that despite the fact that this had to happen instantly, they really, really like each other.
Mm-hmm. So looking back at your whole writing experience and knowing that like you kind of did this really fast, all things considering, what was like the part that really like stumped you for the story, as long as it's not a spoiler? Like, was there any part of it where you were like, how am I going to make this work? Or was it maybe like the shifting in the timelines and making sure that the past was enough to like explain the present? Like, was there anything that kind of like really challenged you in this book that you weren't really expecting, maybe, or something that you were expecting and you were dreading and you managed to do it? Like any kind of
the instant love was the hardest. The second hardest was, making sure that I got the voodoo stuff right and that I honored the tradition because, in America, because of white supremacy, voodoo was made out to be this like evil, scary, demonic thing because it was something that enslaved people had that the white people didn't know about. And it made them very nervous, obviously, because what are they doing in there?
Right.
Are they going to come get us? Are they going to use this against us? And so there was sort of this campaign of voodoo being bad when all it really is a mix of African mysticism and Catholicism.
Right.
It's a religious practice.
Mhm.
And because I was using voodoo for evil in this book,
Yeah.
I didn't want it to seem like I didn't understand that that was this character's choice and that that's not what voodoo is in general. And that's why Eva Mercy shows up
Right.
at a book signing and talks about it and explains it a little bit.
Right, right. Also, I just feel like we haven't touched on the character of Miss Stella, and she's like literally the best part of this book. So I'm wondering where like the inspiration for her character came from, and if you had the best time writing her and creating her, because I think I know for a fact like she was literally the highlight of the book for me. And some of my friends that have read it also have just been like, but don't you wish you had a Miss Stella in your life? I'm like, no, but actually, like I wish. So tell me about
Yeah.
the inspiration behind her character and how you came to build her.
Well, first of all, I love older women. And by older, I mean old. Like I love an old lady.
Yeah.
And like in any family party or anything, like you will find me either next to a puppy or next to an old person. Like literally, I just want to know, tell me all your stuff. I want the stories. I want the wisdom. I want all of it.
Yeah.
Because when I see old people, I don't see old people. I see a young person that got old and, like I
So
want
much
to know
life that's been
so
lived.
much
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Like, tell me about it. So I always wanted to write an older, like wise character. And but really what inspired this specific character is I was on Instagram one day and I saw it was this woman's birthday. I think it was like 94, 95. And this gorgeous older Black woman, turns out she was like sitting on a chase lounge in this like hot, midi length red dress. She had this gray bob with like these soft waves, and she was just stunning. And I'm reading the caption. She's turning 95. She was Jackie Robinson's widow and also a civil rights activist and all this stuff. And I'm just like, the stories this woman must
Yeah.
have. Oh my God. And she's so elegant and chic. What is she wearing? Like, I just got obsessed with her. I did all this
Yeah.
research. Like, okay, that's Miss Stella.
It's amazing. And
Yeah.
writing the story and like obviously with like Tuesday, all of these characters, like I feel like this book just has like a big cast of characters and everyone is very distinct. Like writing everyone's voice and having everyone's purpose, was that a challenge for you? Or like what was that like to just kind of more than the story being so layered, having so many dynamic characters in it also? Like I feel like you just packed so much into this book in such a short amount of time.
I know it wasn't a challenge. That's one of my favorite things is side characters. And the whole thing with writing good side characters is that they don't know they're side characters. Like they should all sound like they walked over from the book that they are starring in,
Right. I love that. Yeah.
So really developed full backstories, when they're talking, it's them talking. It's not just some person there to help push the narrative forward or to, like in a reality show when it's a side character, the producer's like, okay, go in there and ask so-and-so how she felt about the date last night.
Right.
Like it's not just a stand-in for the audience. It's a real character.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love writing secondary characters.
Yeah, and you do it so well. But before we go, I just need to ask you about the cover because I think this is like the most gorgeous book cover I've ever seen. And I'm so happy that your team sent me a physical copy, not just like an advance copy that has like a fake spine. Like I have a real deal cover spine. It's gorgeous. Can you tell me about the cover art? I mean, all of your books have had stunning, stunning cover arts. Like I'm obsessed with obviously 7 Days in June and then The Perfect Find, the older cover and the new cover. And it's a little more different. But like, tell me about the cover for this book, and like, are you involved in that process at all? Like, how does it, I never ask authors like how the
Mhm.
artwork comes to be, and I'm obsessed with all of yours. So can you like divulge a bit about the history or the backstory behind this cover?
It's so pretty. I
It's
wish I could
pretty.
claim it's the design team at Grand Central is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like it's they get it. They just get it. Um, they send me, I give them sort of inspiration, but they do their own thing. And they also want, wanted the book to like the cover to live in conversation with 7 Days in June and The Perfect Find. So like the type is very similar. The copy treatment
Yeah.
is similar. And I had this idea of just like a really, really close up of two beautiful faces.
Mhm.
Um, and when they sent me the draft, they sent like three different colors. And there was the one that it is now, which is like blue and purple. And then they sent like a red and orange one, and then like a minty green,
Okay.
pinky one. And we all just really liked this one because it takes place in February, so it's cold. And so it has like that sort of icy iridescence to it with the blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just stunning. I love it. It looks iconic.
No, it's, and I know people that don't know the book and that will see it on the shelf, like they're going to be drawn to it because of, first of all, I feel like it's not very often you see like a female and a male face on a book cover. Like I feel
Mhm.
often it's more like elusive. You don't really know these, like it's just very striking as a cover, and the colors are absolutely, I'm obsessed with it. Like I have it out on my shelf. I have to figure out a way to like not just have the spine. Like I want to have like a combination of books
Yeah.
on the shelf that are like spines and some that are facing forward. It's really so stunning. I have it here just like sitting up like that because I haven't figured out how to place it properly,
Ah,
but it's gorgeous.
thank
I just needed to
you.
compliment whoever made that because it's really something stunning. And from the first time I saw like a little like a photo of it, I guess,
Yeah.
I was like, wait, what? And then when I had it in my hands and I could like really examine it, it's really
Mhm.
so gorgeous. So I just had to share that also. And I
Yeah,
want
they
to
killed it.
close, but
They killed
yeah,
it. Look, my nails.
I know
Like
it's so
everything
very on
is
brand.
reflecting.
It's epic. It's
I
you're
want
not
to dress
wrong.
like the cover.
I seriously, you should. You should. It's really, the colors are so gorgeous, but yeah. Okay, well, I feel like that's really all I had to ask you about this book. I mean, I could sit here and talk to you for a million years and ask you 1,000 more questions about things you're working on and how excited I am, but I'm just so happy we get to connect again, and congratulations on this book. I know everyone's gonna, I know it's already getting the most insane praise ever. Like I see all the time people are talking about it and it's already being recognized on these lists, and it's just gonna continue to knock it out of the park. But I'm very excited for you. And I really, really, really love this book. It was so unexpected for me. It was such a ride. Like I wish I had you in my pocket while I was reading it so I could like straight up tell you. I was like, the first 20%, I was like, where is this going? Like I
Right.
couldn't, I was just like, I'm on this train, but like, and then I just was like my jaw was just open and the entire like last 40%. I was like, it's just too good. I loved it. I loved it.
Oh, wow. I'm so happy you loved it. And
Yeah,
thank you so much for having me on again. I love chatting with you.
of course. Okay.